Now, for those of you who don't know or haven't followed boxing, Vasiliy Lomachenko had 3 belts for boxing titles. He put all 3 belts on the line in an effort to be the first person in boxing history to unify the lightweight belts versus Teofimo Lopez. Now, that is a bold strategy because you are basically saying it is all or nothing. And Vasiliy Lomachenko walked out with nothing. Teofimo made a name for himself. He beat Lomachenko incredible fight. But most importantly, Lopez now holds all 4 belts and has unified them in that respect. Nick, please tell us what you thought of this fight, what happened, and how did Vasiliy Lomachenko walk out with no hardware?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a tough decision when a fighter has to decide whether he's going to risk it all. He has 3 of the 4 belts in the weight class, and he's saying, all right, I'll do whatever it takes to unify, or not unify, but to collect all these belts. I wanted to have all the hardware in the lightweight division, and that meant he's going to have to face Teofimo Lopez, a guy who's 9 years younger than him, who just won the belt earlier this year. He's gonna have to face him and risk it all for 1 belt. So it's a huge task, and then you have the pressure of it being Vasiliy Lomachenko, one of the biggest boxers in today's age. Lomachenko has been killing everybody. He's been destroying people. People have been quitting on their stool because they can't take him anymore. It's just too much. And so this reminded me a lot of what happened to Daniel Cormier in his final fight of his career, where he had a game plan going into it, and then he got punched in the mouth, and then it was...
And then it's all over from there.
Yeah, his game plan got destroyed. And what I don't think Vasily understood about Teofimo is a guy who's that much younger than him is going to be a lot quicker, and he's going to be a lot stronger throughout the fight because it's just a pure age difference. You're talking 32 versus 23. That is huge. And when you saw the approach from Vasily, he was taking it slow. He wanted to be calibrated and figure out the tendencies of Teofimo and figure out how to fight against him. And that's when Teofimo took advantage. He probably knew going in that that's what Vasily was going to do, and he was going to strike quickly and just start earning points right away. And that's when things started to go wrong. You get into it, and then six rounds in, it's 6-0 for Teofimo, and now Vasily's backup is up against the wall. And surprisingly, what I heard after the fight, Vasily was extremely surprised that he lost this fight. He thought he won it unanimously, which was very surprising. He thought he won every round, and I was surprised to hear that because he wasn't doing.
Was he watching the same fight that we all watched?
I don't know what was going through his mind or what his coaches weren't telling him.
He didn't throw a punch for the first 6 rounds.
Yeah, he just stood there and he was taking it. But you saw him start to come on stronger in the final 6 rounds. But it wasn't enough. Teofimo used that young energy he has to continue and keep that pace of the fight that he had through the first 6 rounds and just kept putting it on Vasily. And that's why he ended up losing by unanimous decision. It's just Teofimo approached it perfectly. Don't try to knock him out, just try to gather points. And that's the way you have to do it in boxing. It's all about points. And that's why he is now being, a lot of people want to consider him the next Roy Jones Jr. because he is just climbing through or climbing up the ranks extremely quickly, and Vasily just made Teofimo one of the biggest names in all of boxing because of this fight.
Yeah, so, I mean, I've heard, Teofimo Lopez is widely considered a top boxer at this point. What he showed against Lomachenko is one of the greatest upsets in sports history, but is it the biggest upset in boxing history? And I think that's where we're going to have our debate right now. Nick, I'll let you go first.
It's an interesting one because there weren't a lot of people counting on Teofimo to do much. A guy who's young, he's not as experienced as Vasiliy. He hasn't faced competition like Vasiliy. There were a lot of people that just didn't expect this, but then as the fight got closer, the tide started to shift. People started to think that maybe Vasiliy doesn't have it. Maybe this isn't going to be his fight. And when we look at other upsets, and I think the biggest upset that has ever happened in boxing was when Buster Douglas beat Mike Tyson. Going into that fight, Mike Tyson was unstoppable. There was nobody in the world that was going to touch this guy. And then he gets knocked out. And that shocked everybody. This didn't shock everybody. So I think, no, this wasn't the biggest upset ever in boxing, but it was a huge upset. So I think that it's going to be tough to top that Buster Douglas victory over Mike Tyson as the biggest upset ever in boxing.
Yeah, I think we agree there. I wasn't sure what your take on this was going to be, but I agree. I think Buster Douglas over Mike Tyson has to be the number one upset in boxing history. But I will say this is almost neck and neck with it, because going into this, if you asked anybody who was a casual boxing fan who Teofimo Lopez is, they probably wouldn't be able to tell you. Even though he deserves the credit that, he deserves more credit than that, they probably couldn't have told you. And I think it has a lot to do with the fact that he, before this, was kind of unproven, even though he had just won one belt earlier this year, but he's also super young. And I think when you're going against somebody as decorated and as experienced as Vasiliy Lomachenko, it's really, nobody else really gets a fair shake. And Teofimo Lopez, utilizing what he has in his innate ability as a younger person, as somebody who can sustain energy for longer bouts of time, I think he was able to come up with the perfect game plan, like you talked about, and he was able to strike early, strike often, and he was able to win the first 6 rounds, and from there all he had to do was win a couple more, and that's it, unanimous decision, he wins. It also helped him that I don't understand why Lomachenko didn't throw a single, real punch since in the first 6 rounds. It didn't really make sense to me watching this, or just taking this all in. But I just, for the sake of the question, I do believe this is very close to that Buster Douglas Mike Tyson fight.
Yeah, and I just want to add to what you're saying. Teofimo is not a big name. I barely knew who he was going into this fight. I mean, the victory he had where he got the belt, it wasn't even the main event. He won the belt as somebody who was middle of the card. And that's the height at which he was in his career when he obtained the belt. He just was a blip on the radar, and everybody just overlooked him, said, okay, whatever. But everybody was so focused on Vasiliy, and I think it's possibly the pressure. Teofimo, what did he have to lose? He's 23. He's young. He could bounce back from this. Vasili's not getting any younger. Right. So this was one of his last chances to unify the belts. And it was all pressure on him. And that's kind of been the baseline going through everything, every situation, whether it's baseball or UFC or boxing. If you don't have the pressure on you, you're going to perform much better. So I think that Teofimo, that's why a lot of the tide started to turn, because everybody realized what Vasiliy had done, the situation he had placed himself in, and there was a lot riding on this for him, and not much for Teofimo. So that's when people started to think, oh, this is going to probably not go in Vasily's way.
Yeah. No, for sure. And for you to tell me that, you're hearing that Vasiliy Lomachenko thought that he had won all of the rounds, including the first six, it boggles my mind. Just because Teofimo, again, came out swinging, he came out aggressive, he landed some great hits. He definitely outscored Lomachenko in every objective person's eyes. And, it just, you have to give him credit. You have to give credit to his camp. We all know who Teofimo Lopez is now, and I guarantee most people are not going to continue to sleep on him. Those who are probably the ones who, probably thought that Lomachenko didn't lose one of those rounds either.